Now, the same regulatory corporation that oversees the operation of the electricity grid had warned way back in 2018, and I quote, "An accelerated retirement of coal-fired and nuclear plants could lead to power outages, temporary shortfalls in surplus generation and transmission problems," unquote. Now remember, the professor is writing on May 24, a little over a week ago, and talking about, quote, "significant implications for the nation's electricity power grids." And he makes this point because this is what the Greens and the Teals and others are aiming for, or even worse, and they've got many disciples in the Labor and Liberal parties, though Madeleine King, the Labor Resources Minister, offers some hope. But writes the professor, quote, "Since 2007, electricity output from the nation's fleet of coal plants has fallen by more than 50%, displaced mainly by renewables, and now accounts for only 22% of generation," unquote. Now, they're talking about a looming crisis this summer in America over electricity supply. They've swallowed the global warming Kool-Aid and displaced coal and installed renewables. But, writes the professor, unlike wind turbines and solar panels, coal plants are always on, regardless of the time of day or the weather conditions. Coal plants, he writes, keep months of fuel on site, providing additional security and resilience to the grid. What is more, he says, natural gas-fired generation, which supplies about 40% of the electrons to the nation's power grids, has become much more expensive, unquote. And he alludes to the fact that the spot price for natural gas in recent months has nearly doubled. And then he says this, quote, "The Environmental Protection Administration's agenda to accelerate coal plant closures has put our electric power grids and our economy at risk." He adds, what is more, the coal fleet is being pushed aside much faster than reliable alternatives can be incorporated into transmission networks, unquote. And then this, and I've been going on about this for I don't know how long, quote, "Eliminating policies that cause market distortions, such as the huge subsidies to wind and solar projects, would be one way to sustain baseload power generation. But because renewables have strong political support, those subsidies are likely to remain in place," unquote. As Professor Weinstein writes, unfortunately, the generation mix that has underpinned grid reliability and affordable electricity is currently under threat. A perfect storm of market failure and regulatory overreach in place of sound energy policy, unquote. That's America, and that is us. We're not far behind. I've regularly called, as you know, this whole energy policy a national economic suicide note, and so it is. I certainly welcome the comments by Madeleine King, but it's to be hoped Labor are not speaking out of both sides of their mouth.